Testing. Testing. Hello there, everybody. I see some folks are coming in.
Hello.
All right, get my video working here. Do y'all see me now? Let's see here.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. There we go. We're all working from home today, huh? So just so you all know, I may mute folks as we move along because there's going to be a bunch of folks who are joining us. There's sort of this forming sort of social norm around when Zoom conferences actually start, giving time for folks to adjust to using Zoom and getting all configured. I think the standard operating procedure is about 3 minutes after the official start time, which gives us about 2 minutes and 50 seconds before we get started. I will also encourage folks to mute. I'm actually just going to go for it and mute everybody right now because this is a fairly large group. And you guys can unmute yourself if you have questions, though. Also, a couple other things. I want to make sure that everybody's able to see their screens all right, so they can see all this. And as folks are coming on, I want to remind folks that I am going to record this. So please feel free to turn off your camera if you're like, ooh, you're going to record this. Like, that's totally fine. I get it. If you don't want folks to see your face, that's cool. This is also broadcast on YouTube Live right now as well. So again, if you're like, yeah, not cool, David, just turn your camera off. I get it. We're all working from home. Got a few more people coming in here. So I'll repeat some of that again as folks are coming in. Just a reminder that if you have a lot of background noise, to make sure that you're muted because there's a bunch of folks here. And that I am going to be recording this, and it is also on YouTube Live. So if you don't want to be seen, turn your camera off, and I'm not offended in any way. All right, I'm going to keep, there's some more people showing up right now. I think that we've got it all set, so folks should just be able to start showing up as they get here. We're gonna give it about 1 more minute and then we'll get started. All right, well, we'll get started a little bit, I guess, a little bit late, but maybe right on time, as norms are go in terms of virtual conferences these days. Let me get this recording going. Again, if you are just hopping on now, if you're not comfortable being recorded, please note that this is being recorded, and you are welcome to turn off your cameras. If you're a little like, ooh, I don't want people seeing me in my home or in my sweatpants and hanging out, as we're all perhaps doing right now. So I'm going to get started here. My name is David Berg. I am Director of Technology for Big Picture Learning. I am also the product owner for Emblaze, manage the platform that we use to help schools scale their internship programs. I want to point out that I am a teacher. I was a teacher at a Big Picture high school in Sacramento, California for 10 years. I was an advisor at that school, which meant that I nurtured along 2.5 cohorts of students. And about halfway through the second cohort of students, I was asked to be the assistant principal for that school. I also then moved to Washington State to open up a Big Picture school and be on the leadership team for the planning year for a new Big Picture school up here in Issaquah, Washington, called Gibson Eck High School. And I was also their founding internship coordinator and ran their internship program for their founding year. So I have some background in being an advisor and some background in being an internship coordinator and what it means to run and scale an internship program. So to get started here, I just want to call out that this is a crazy time, okay? We all know that. It's a crazy time. And so I'm going to come up with through this process of this presentation, I'm going to have some ideas to propose to you. But I also know that you may have some great ideas out there as well. And so I want to pose a couple questions to you. I'm giving you these questions on the front end so you can think about them during this time. Let me mute folks here. Continue. Okay. So these are the questions that I'm wondering about from you all. There we go. First is, what is one thing you are doing in the short term to grow your internship program? The next question is, what is one longer term project that you are embarking on to grow and improve your internship program? And the third question, not surprising, is what is the greatest challenge you face due to school closure and quarantine. Now, at the end of our presentation here, you're going to have a chance to work with small groups and answer these questions using a platform that I use called Mentimeter. But I want to also call out that if you go to Emblaze Connect, if your school does use Emblaze, you can go in there. If you go into an Emblaze, you can click on the Connect button, and then from there you'll see these 3 questions posted. And I'll actually just switch my screen share over to show you those. 1 second here. Share, and there we go. So you'll see that in Emblaze Connect, which is our online collaborative site to help us through this time of craziness, there are those 3 questions. What is the greatest challenge you face due to school closures? What is one longer term project that you have, and one short term thing that you're working on? Feel free to answer there, but again, you'll also have the chance to respond to these prompts at the end in smaller groups. Okay. So moving back. Okay, so this is a quote that recently came out. Simply put, we face the largest adaptive challenge for large urban public education systems in a generation. Pick your metaphor. This is the Moonshot, the Manhattan Project, the Normandy Landing, and the Marshall Project, and the clock is ticking. This quote is from the superintendent of LA Unified School District, the 2nd largest school district in the country, in the United States. And really sort of, it can be like a profound political statement, but I really do want to call out that, and that you'll see this as a theme in this conversation, that this is a once in a lifetime moment to influence this giant ship that moves and changes direction very slowly, this giant thing called public education. We're really given this opportunity now because that ship is in a raging storm to really chart a new course. So we think of this as a tremendous opportunity. As such, we know that this is a moment of clear seismic shift that's going on. So the school building is no longer the center of learning. It's a pretty profound thing. For 150 years, we've shifted to this model of comprehensive public education, particularly in the United States, and the idea that school has become the center of knowledge, the center of knowledge acquisition for young people. Well, that is, in a matter of weeks, that core guiding principle about free and fair public education has been changed. Now, right now, in this earthquake that we're experiencing, the first shock waves are around online learning. Definitely right now, there's this big movement, and I'm sure all the practitioners who are on this call are feeling this, and you're all like, wow, I'm on Zoom. Yeah, I do this a lot now, or whatever web conference system you're using. There's definitely this immediate impact to engage with kids in a virtual environment, to protect their health and safety, to protect your health and safety, while also making sure that instruction is continuing. That's happening right now. But we know that there are some longer term impacts of this. I just heard Dr. Fauci, the chief of the CDC, talk about he's hopeful, this was just today, he was saying, he's hopeful that kids will go back to school in September. But what that will look like might very well be different than it's ever looked before. So kids may actually go back to school, but there's some big profound changes that we should expect to see even in September, October, November, and all of next school year because of this crisis. So I want to call out, first of all, a little bit of network theory. Now, I have to admit, I have jumped right into this idea of network theory and what it is, and I'm trying to learn it. And some of you may know more about network theory than me. So please feel free, and this was reminding me, there is a chat in this as well. Feel free to prompt or post any questions in the chat, and we could just lead conversation there. I want to pull that chat up on my screen as well, so I see if anything's happening there yet. Nope, nothing yet. So I just want to talk a little bit about network theory great, excellent. Related to learning and related to education and the education system. So historically, education has worked in a pretty centralized model, which means that there was a learning hub, which was a school building, and there was a node that was the students. And this is network theory that you may hear if you talk to people who do things around building like IT infrastructure and building the internet and things like that. But it's comparable. So in a centralized model, there's this hub and spoke system, so that everything is happening around that central item, the school, the central thing, the hub. Now, that we've moved away from that, but you could see today, if you think about like the one-room schoolhouse in the country somewhere, like that's a risky proposition today, when the idea of people attending the same building becomes something that we have to consider now. Now, in our current model, we're more of a decentralized model. And what a decentralized model is that there's several hubs and spokes. And so in this situation, the hubs can be the district office, that could be the central hub here. The nodes are still the students, but you could have a variety of schools, and it could be other things besides schools as well, but it's all sort of channeling through the school or through the school district. It can be very hierarchical. Now, this is more resilient. This is more resilient than a centralized model, but as we see now, when there's an institutional crash, meaning nobody could show up into buildings, the whole infrastructure starts to fall apart in this model as well. So decentralized models can be risky as well. The way the internet works is a distributed model. Okay, the distributed model is hubs and nodes that are spread out everywhere. And so that you could think about this like a city's highway system. If one of the roads is closed because a bridge collapsed, there may be other ways in a distributed system for you to get into the city. A distributed model is by nature more resilient. Now, this is the mode that we want to go to, but I want to point out a couple things about this. So first of all, those nodes, those could be the school building. No, and I don't say the school there, the school building. The hub could be the community center. The hub could be internships. It could be peer-to-peer learning. All of those could be the hubs. But in a Wild West distributed model, where there are no rules, no governing bodies, no regulations, things could disintegrate pretty quickly. And we saw that in some of the early iterations of the internet. The internet now is a distributed model, but it's a regulated environment. There are rules in that space. So that construct, that there are rules like what sites can be up, what sites can't be up, the way we interact with the internet through IPs and the network protocols, all those rules are super important to making this process organized and making it effective. Now, so what we think is that actually that whole system is now what school should be. Schools should no longer be thought of as the building. It should be thought of as this distributed network of learning, a knowledge network. And that school should be. Now, that means that there are rules to play here, and there are certain things that need to be measured throughout this more complex system. That complexity still needs to have measurement. We need to know if peer learning is working. We need to know if internships are effective. We need to know if kids are safe if they're going in the school building. Like, all of those things still need to happen, but we need this distributed model to create more resilience. Now, with that, I want to just call out and remind you all, and if you've ever seen my pitches before, you'll see me talk about this, and this comes from the work of Julia Freeland Fisher, who I'll share her book towards the end of this presentation. But there's this idea that schools have historically been the place of the what, where knowledge happens. Knowledge happens in school. Now, well before COVID-19, there was some structural problems with that assumption, that that's where all the learning happened, because we know that kids now do a lot of they're dual citizens in the world. They're citizens of the world and they're citizens of the digital world. And they do learning in the digital world. And if you think yourself about if you've ever gone on YouTube to learn how to do something, the idea that the school is the sole proprietor of knowledge is really becoming pretty extinct at this point. Thank you, Emily, for comment there. So before COVID-19, we were still operating under this assumption in some circles that school was really the center of where all knowledge was happening. And that was false. That's not the reality anymore. Kids were going and learning all over the place. And in many ways, the idea of the sage on the stage is becoming obsolete. Now, we also know that the who, meaning the net, who kids know, what we call social capital, has not been traditionally the job of school. Yet we also know that the section of two places, the what kids know and the who kids know, really leads to success in jobs, like how you how you have mobility in your life, as well as sustaining, and also like partners, if how you are able to forge relationships with life partners, do with not just how smart you are or maybe how handsome you are, but also who you know and who essentially vouches for you. So that intersection is really important. Historically, schools have ignored the who. We think this is a really critical moment for schools to reevaluate that. Consider also that in considering that it's 70% of people ended up in their current position because of networking in some way or form. And you could think about this in your personal professional trajectory. You got where you are today, maybe where you're going in the future, has a great deal to do with who you know. That people vouching for you. It could be people letting you, hey, there's this job opening you should check out. It might be formal rep. It might be more remote. It might be LinkedIn networks that you're connected into, and maybe that you know people real well in, but they still connect you with that. Those are the networking stuff that really enables us to move forward. So all of sort of as a preamble, how do we move forward as activists right now in this time? I want to call out the word activist because that's really important to our work at Big Picture Learning. At Big Picture Learning, you may not know, we're a nonprofit organization that really operates in some ways on the edges of education reform. If any of you are in a big picture school, you're probably nodding your head right now. Like, yep, that's right. Like we are schools and Big Picture as an organization tries to push and expand by operating on the edges as activists. It's an important moment for activists. This is one of the things I've heard conversations about is like, this is time for us to be back to basics, to reverting to that, like that hub and spoke centralized model of learning, for instance, or the idea that all of knowledge should be happening at the school, in the classroom, that knowledge should be more universal. That like we need to really continue to push things forward. And so I want to point out this quote, maybe you've seen before: you never let a sea crisis go to waste. And what I mean by that is it's an opportunity to do things you think you could not do before. This is a crisis, and it's really shaking the foundation of institutions, particular case education. That's a tremendous opportunity for us as activists. What does that look like? I'm gonna just propose some things to start, and this starting is really just an introductory into this. I do to be able to walk away with some ideas and some tools and some concrete things. The things that I think that we do a disservice is if we just fully on sort of this completely distributed model of ideas right now. I want to help come up with really solutions today for how we know that on the ground things are tight now. And so these are some ideas that we are thinking of. I broke this into two categories: ideas for today and ideas for today being like short-term things that you could be doing right now, ideas for tomorrow, maybe longer-term projects. So first of all, create a virtual parent network. Now, some of you might see this and go, oh, I'm a parent myself. I have an 8 and a 10-year-old. And I am getting so many emails right now from teachers, from my kids' teachers. What I want to emphasize is not a parent network of, let me tell you all the things that we're doing as teachers for your kids. What I'm saying is a parent network where parents can have a role in the learning of not just their kids, but of the kids in their community. I think that this is a really wonderful opportunity for you to leverage the power of all the parents in your network to mentor your young people. Now, how do you do that? Obviously, there's some things that you have to deal with in your district around compliance, around who could talk to who. Like, you should have those conversations, absolutely. But then what do? Do you create Facebook groups for this? Do you create email chains? Do you use Slack? There are lots of different ways that you can do that. One thing you could do, honestly, is ask kids or ask parents if they want to be added as an opportunity on Emblaze. Ask every parent, do you want to be an opportunity in Emblaze? And remember, in Emblaze, you can name opportunities whatever they want. They could be mentorship. You could call them mentorship opportunities, parent mentoring opportunities. Come up with naming conventions to include that real world learning. It could be virtual parent mentoring opportunities. And then you put that out to kids and let the kids build those networks and forge those relationships with the other parents in their community. It could be a really compelling way to build that network. Another thing is I really want to encourage folks to reach out to your mentors. Businesses right now are struggling and they're looking for solutions and looking for answers. And honestly, I think that they're looking for love right now. They're looking for some affirmation that they are valuable in the community. And you all know, if you're internship coordinators, that you have those mentors that just have time and time again really represented for your young people, really made some profound impacts on these young people's lives. We owe it to those folks to tell them thank you. At least that. Just say thank you for your time. I know that you're going through a hard time. Thank you for all the time you've given my young people. We've oftentimes talked about how we think that schools should come up with those little window stickers that you give out to mentors that says something like, this business is a proud mentor or host internships from so-and-so school, from your school. So they put that up in their window and say, like, we're showing that we're giving back to the community. Well, this is a time for you to help them to help see that. Now, this also can be, as we talk longer term, about things that you could do to help these businesses get back into business. You could be doing campaigns, email campaigns to all of your families around, this business needs our help. Like we should start visiting them. Maybe it's a restaurant and it has takeout service. Like, you should visit that place. This is a real opportunity for you to forge deeper relationships with your mentors. They're ready to listen right now. Now, the other thing is we think that this is a really important time to start thinking about, it's a time to take a step back. Your kids aren't going to internships in most cases right now. And so it's time to take stock of your internship program. And so one of the things that we see is internship programs, when they get started, there's this sometimes unspoken and sometimes maybe it's intuitive idea about internships are important. We should do them. But there's not a real understanding of why they're important, and then the deeper understanding of what makes a great internship or a great real world learning experience and what makes a lousy one. And so this is a time for you to take a step back and think about what you should be measuring towards. What should your internship program look like a year from now when things are back to normal and you're really wanting to up the game of the program? This is a great time to think about how you measure the success of your program. Now, there are a couple of things that I'll show you here. One is there's a form here, and I'm going to put it, oops, I didn't mean to open that. Give me 1 second. I'll grab that and link and put it in the chat. There's a form here that is a helpful tool to building your internship program. This is something that we generally give to schools that are starting an internship program because it helps you understand things like, well, when is the time that the internships are going to happen? And what is your scale plan? Like, when are you going to have 100 kids out? When are you going to have 150 kids out, and so forth? But one of the pieces of this measurement tool is that it helps you get a sense of what we consider some of the criteria for a successful program. So for instance, engagement. My team is fully on board and excited to improve our internship program. Like, doing this real self-assessment about the state of your program, sharing this with all of the advisors or educators and school leaders in your program can be a really helpful instrument to measure the successes and the strengths and the weaknesses of your internship program. So I encourage you to take a look at this form. You could take this form and build it on your own, build it on Google Forms to do whatever. Whenever the form is submitted, you get an email that summarizes the results. So you all can come together and look at those results, but you can also build out this form on your own and collect the results and compile them in different ways. I will also point out that this form is in Emblaze Connect as well. If you go to, let me switch my screen share over again. If you go over to Emblaze Connect, there we go. If you go under assessment here, you'll see that form is right there as well. So there's a couple different ways that you can get it. So going back, so that's one thing that we think is important is thinking about how you're measuring the overall the strengths of your program and the weaknesses of your program. So you could start to plan, have an action plan for improvement moving forward. Another thing to consider is a reminder that in Emblaze, you can build custom prompts. Now, these prompts are really intended to be tools to measure the success of your program. Now, there are 5 key moments, and if you've heard this before, I apologize, but one of the moments where you can customize questions is when advisors are starting internships. Another moment you can customize questions is when advisors or teachers are ending internships. A third moment is when students are checking in daily. A fourth moment is when students are checking out at the end of every day. And a fifth moment is when mentors are confirming attendance. Each of those 5 moments, you could customize questions. This is a really good time to start to think about what are the daily prompts that I should be asking my young people when they're checking in for their internships, so that I could see over time we're measuring towards success. I'll also point out a little bit of a shameless plug, but not for me, but for one of my outstanding, incredible colleagues. Tomorrow, Javier Guzman is doing a session on going beyond online learning and thinking about measurements. Let me grab this link for you all. Go back. Sorry about that. Give me 1 second. Let me just grab this link. Copy that and paste that in the chat for y'all. Okay, so you have that link if you're interested in that session. All right. So consider attending that. Javier has been really front and center in our organization on thinking about new measures and different ways that we could be measuring student success, and how this is a really great time to think more broadly about measuring, states now, the federal government is waiving testing requirements. And I've heard like the superintendent of Washington State say outright for public instruction in Washington State say, this is a great time for us to really get over our obsession on testing. I was like, wow, that's profound. Like, this is a really great moment to think more broadly about what you want to measure towards. Okay, some other ideas for today that you could be doing. Straighten up your data. If you go into Emblaze or whatever you're using right now, think about your data set from a global perspective. Do you use naming conventions to name the different types of opportunities you have in the data set? Are your addresses for your internships up to date? Are your mentors' contact information, is that up to date? Do you have photos of your internships? Kids love that. They engage and they request internships more if there's a photo. So this is a time where you could really take a step back from your data set and update it, clean it up. We're happy to help you with that. There's a couple things we'll talk about later on, but I'm happy to help with bulk reporting so you can get a spreadsheet of all your internships and update them all on a spreadsheet if that's faster for you, and we can do a bulk update of that for you. This is a great time to take a fresh look at your data. And then also, and I use the back to basics a little bit in jest because I mentioned earlier something that we want to be careful of, but what we consider back to basics. Like, have you worked with your kids virtually on writing quality emails? Up until this point, like that maybe has been less of a priority in their lives. But now with virtual learning and virtual interactions happening, it may be a good time to refresh and give them instructions on how to write professional emails. Obviously helping them learn how to use web conferencing tools. And then I think this is super important right now. And in fact, there's a lot of research that's saying for graduating seniors right now, the best thing that they could be doing right now, because there's no jobs, like the job market is horrible right now, but the best thing they could be doing right now is just building their professional network. This is a crucial time for kids to be spending time on LinkedIn, doing searches, connecting with people, just building those networks. And I'll point out, like as an example, if I go into LinkedIn and share my screen over here again, if I type in, if I'm like, I'm interested in engineering, I type in engineering, okay, you could go into engineering, there we go, engineering in jobs, engineering in people, and I could find, oh, here's all the engineers that are in my network, that are second tier people. I could connect with them. That kind of a thing, getting kids to do that right now, to build a more robust professional network, can be really crucial as the economy starts to turn around. So networking, and building their LinkedIn presence. Okay. Another thing I want to point out is we have this document. This is actually just came out, and there's still some edits being made to it. But Big Picture Learning is coming up with a bunch of resources, and I'll share all the resource links at the end as well. And also, by the way, I'll share this whole deck with you also. But this is an infographic about sort of what could be happening right now when kids can't be going out into internships. So these are some of the ideas for today, and I'm going to hit you up a little bit later to get some ideas from you all. I also want to point out that this kind of struck me in a call yesterday that we were having, a webinar yesterday. So Emblaze has functionality where students can suggest opportunities. Now, when they go to suggest an opportunity, internship coordinators can, thank you for that comment. Still looking at my LinkedIn. Thank you. Excuse me, sometimes I forget to switch over. Appreciate that. Thank you, Andrew. Okay, so one of the things about Emblaze is that students could suggest opportunities. Now, that's historically been a way for you to build your network. Because if kids go and they search in Emblaze and they don't see an opportunity that they're interested in, they can suggest an opportunity that they want to find. Well, we use the word opportunity. Like kids could suggest a hike in the forest as a real world leaving to learn opportunity. You could then go and add it, and then kids could log time for it. So you could use Emblaze to have kids suggest opportunities for all sorts of real world learning that they want to do, that they're able to do right now, that they may have not been able to do in a formal internship. I encourage you to leverage and hack Emblaze to use it so that you could track student time and place and data around any leaving to learn opportunities that they're doing. So great. Yeah, I see that. You're all now looking at my screen now. Terrific. I will also again point out that I'm going to share this deck with you a little bit later. So all those videos, you'll see those as well. Okay. The other thing is that now's the time to start building your program, like really thinking about this. So moving from today into tomorrow, what are the longer term things that you could be doing? This is a real moment where you can start building your internship program, building the size of your network. Okay, so consider some things here. First of all, how will your school respond if group sizes are limited to 20 people? Can an internship program help? It's possible, and the next slide I'll talk about this, but it's possible that school will start back in September, maybe even before. But I think it's pretty unlikely that you will have a large comprehensive high school that maybe has 2,000 students, that all of the kids will be interacting in the hallways at the same time in the near future. I don't see that as being something that will be considered sort of acceptable in the current culture and climate around COVID-19. So will there be maybe staggered school days, things like that? Is it conceivable that schools will open slowly and be poised to close if there's an outbreak, but smaller businesses may be opening up again? You know, one of the things that we see all of the internship data that comes in with Emblaze, and we see that some kids are still going to internships, and it's pretty remarkable. What's interesting about it is almost universally, all of the internships that kids are still going to today are at auto mechanic shops. Now that's interesting. Like one of the reasons is because kids love that. They're following their passions. The other thing is that in many ways, they're working with a small cohort of adults, and there's not a lot of crossover of infections then, because you're working in a garage. There's also some physical space between people. So that 6 foot space thing can be easier to manage. It's also an essential service. People need their cars fixed, so those businesses are still open. So as these businesses start to reopen, that may happen faster than schools start to reopen. And so maybe there are opportunities for kids to do leaving to learns, get out into the real world before even schools are ready for everybody to show back up in the building. And so ultimately, one of the things that I want folks to think about is going into next fall, are there scenarios where going to an internship is safer on a student's health than them going to school? We think that there are scenarios where that will be the case. So let's consider that a little bit more. This is a scenario, but it's not me just making this up. This comes from an article in The Atlantic. And again, there's a link to it I'll share at the end of this deck. So this was a proposed sort of projection about how this goes over the next 8 to 10 months. So as you see, and we're in the middle of this now, we're in quarantine right now. In general, we're all in quarantine. What that means is that we're having only essential travel outside of our homes to go to the grocery store, to get gas, doctor's visits, things like that. Really focused on flattening the curve, as we hear. As the curve is getting flattened, which we're starting to see some signs that that's happening now, at least in the United States, thankfully, finally. In June to October, we might see returns to small gatherings, some limited travel, but still some pockets of quarantine. You know, we're reading information about how rural areas were slower to be impacted by this, but they may be impacted further into the future as the disease spreads. And then in November, we could see a return to normalcy with perhaps periodic quarantines. You know, they're saying that we'll get to the point of a vaccine if we're really lucky in 12 to 18 months. And many people say that that's overly ambitious. So some return to normalcy with periodic, like, oh, we gotta retreat back to our homes for a couple of weeks again, kind of a thing. So that's the sort of the general working theory, or one scenario about the way that this goes. And I think it's not particularly optimistic. It's not particularly pessimistic. I think it's sort of right in the middle. Feel free to challenge me on that. In terms of sort of our social lives, what does this look like? So we're still in quarantine. Virtual happy hours are going on everywhere. We're getting sick of virtual happy hours. We're getting sick of seeing everybody on Zoom. We're doing our best to keep the older people in our families sort of connected through virtual things and things like that. We would expect to move to a place perhaps in June to October. It's a big range, but somewhere in there, where perhaps people will start to go back to restaurants. But cities may reduce the capacity restrictions in restaurants, so less people can be in there. Space restrictions in bars, things like that. Maybe small events leveraging the fact that it's summer and that maybe they're more outdoor types of events. Again, people spread out more, smaller quantities of people attending. And then again, continued restriction for people who are particularly vulnerable. And this may evolve as treatment options start to come about as well. And then we get to a place where maybe in November, we get to large sporting events and big gatherings. And I call that out. There's a link there because, you know, the NFL is very seriously considering canceling football for next year. Now, however you feel about football, like it's a big part of the American ethos, as well as Major League Baseball, which is currently canceled or currently on hold. And so thinking about like large scale gatherings, like that varsity football game at the big high school, like those are not likely going to start before the NFL starts. Like there's a certain amount of like, well, if the NFL isn't playing, like should we not be playing as well? Just setting that standard. So it looks like, you know, in that November, December, January time is where we might start to see some of the return of like attending large events again. For work life, we could see that we have quarantine. We're all working from home. We might move to a place in June to October where the smaller workplaces are reopening, more services are provided again. Businesses, storefront businesses will be opening. Virtual work when possible, though, and improved health and monitoring and protection. So things like wearing face masks, you know, things like that might be happening, and more awareness of like, if you're not feeling well, don't come to work, period, that kind of stuff. And then in November and onward, a return to normalcy, with some vigilance there. So that's sort of like everything else. Now, what does this look like for school? So school's closed, right? We're out of school. And at some point, school may start. Now, I say June through October, because some of this stuff may continue over the summer, but who knows? Online learning continues, but maybe it'll be small group gathering. Maybe it won't be the 1,500 kids showing up to school. Maybe school will be staggered in different school days, as I mentioned there, or different hours, and maybe by grade level more, things like that. And then we think that one of the exciting things is that if you have an internship program already, you're poised to provide another service. You have another offering, another piece, and another hub in that distributed network for young people. So that in that June to October period, we may start to see that it's okay for kids to start to return to internships. I have actually gotten a lot of interest in new programs that want to ramp up summer internship programs right now. Kind of anticipating, maybe it's optimistic, but anticipating that there'll be that level of return to normalcy, small groups gathering, and learning can happen out in the real world. And then return to normalcy. So I just want to call out here that if a high school, all their offerings happen in the school building and they're a large comprehensive high school, their struggling right now because they may not have, there's not that, and anybody who's a high school teacher now knows like you're in boot camp to learn how to do online learning right now. Like they're struggling for that, but that's all they're focused on right now. They don't have the other peer-to-peer network learning, the collaboration necessarily with other organizations to help, and they may not have internship programs. If you have an internship program, we think you're poised to be in a stronger position than most other schools that don't. So related to that, and kind of directly related to that, is that if you don't have an internship program right now, we think that school and district leaders are grasping for solutions. And this is a really powerful time for you to write an email to your district superintendent and tell the story of your internship program, how your kids go out into the real world, but they go into small groups, they go into that little shop on the corner. It's not like you run typically internship programs where you have 100 kids all go to the same business. You have small amounts or 1 or 2 kids going to different internships. Tell that story, because that story is something that district leaders are grasping for right now. Like, oh, there is a piece of resilience in our school settings, something that can persevere in this time. Maybe not right today, but emerging out of this, it's something that's poised to be highly successful. Telling that story right now to district is going to reap benefit in the future. They're going, you're going to know that you're a risk taker and expect this innovation that you've been doing all along, maybe more than ever. And I know some superintendents are super on board with internship programs, some school leaders are on board, some are not. And so this is a real opportunity to change some minds. And then the other piece is thinking ahead about what your businesses need. Thinking about how you could support the businesses in your community returning to normalcy. Kind of expanding on that idea of reaching out to them, but reaching out to them and saying, we're here for you. When you start back up and you need people, you need community service, you need people to help restock your shelves. You need people to help to get the word out about a new sale that you're putting on. Like, we're there for you. We're going to support you because you supported us. Getting that message out now, just like the superintendent, it shows these businesses that at this time of vulnerability, that you're there for them. And it could be a really powerful statement that could, frankly, reap rewards for you in years to come. And then think about what real world learning can happen through this. If kids are saying that they want to help businesses get virtual, kids are really good at virtual. They really get it. They're digital natives. Like, there's some real opportunities for you to reach out to some of the businesses in your community and say, we know you might be struggling with getting virtual work started. Perhaps enlist some of our young people to help, as an example. And then consider the emerging need for people to reestablish physical spaces. We don't think, talking about that earthquake thing, the shock waves, the seismograph, we don't think we're moving to a place where people are going to be virtual all the time forever. Like, we're going to come out of this, and there is the natural, very human need to be in the same space with other people. Okay, there's the need, like right now, I'm not getting any of your nonverbals. Like, I don't know if people are falling asleep or whatever. Like, we need to have those face-to-face interactions. We're going to get back to that. And we think that this is a really powerful time for you to start thinking ahead about what that looks like, what those face-to-face interactions look like. Is it mentors coming on campus to work with you, retirees coming on campus to work with your young people? It's a great time to start to reach out to folks and make those plans to make those things happen. And then one other piece, we think this is a good time to collaborate with other internship programs in your region. There may be sometimes a bit of adversarial nature between internship programs in one region, but this is a time for you to collaborate and build the messaging out to the broadest possible community. And I do want to point out that for those of you who may not know, Emblaze now has as an option for you the ability for you to share and collaborate internships across multiple schools. So if you have 4 high schools that are in a school district, you could say, these are all the internships that I own, but here are the internships that I want other schools to see. Here are the internships that I want to collaborate and have other internship coordinators in my region share and build and have their kids attend as well. You have that functionality now. Not everybody's turned on, but we can work with you to get that activated for you if you'd like. Some schools don't want it very deliberately because it has to be the right climate for that. But if you want to build a collaborative network in your region, the platform will support it. And this may be the time to make the case for more real world learning, more distributed learning. So the idea there is really start getting the word out about the work that you do and why it's so important. We think that this is, again, this is the ultimate time to really be spreading that message. All right, so now this is the interactive part, and here's how this is going to work. I'm going to be breaking you guys up into groups. There's a thing on Zoom where you can break into groups. And when I break you into groups here, I'm going to, let me stop the share here and get the breakout room set up. I'm going to be asking you to answer 3 questions, okay? Please select a moderator, someone who can sort of just take charge of the conversation and move you along. Take about 2 minutes for each question. Let me go back to my screen share so you can see what the questions are. There we go. Sometimes I lose track of all the buttons on Zoom here, as maybe you have as well sometimes. Here we go. Okay. So you'll have about 2 minutes each for each question, and we'll return in about 7 minutes. So there's a link here, and here's the link also. So here are the 3 questions. These are the questions I asked at the beginning. What is one thing that you're doing in the short term to grow your internship program? What is one thing, longer term project that you have? And what is the greatest challenge you face? Now this all, if you go to this link, which I'm going to put in the chat box right now, if I can, copy link address. If you open this link now that I just added, it takes you to a place for you to add these responses. And I'm going to pull that up right now so you can see what that looks like. Go back to this screen share here. And there it is. All right. So this is a place where you could add these responses. When you go to that link, that information will appear here. So I'm going to break folks up into groups, and I'm going to start to see some of the answers starting to come back here. Use this as a time to really, you have a short period of time. If you have a great idea, I just encourage you to voice it, to say it out loud to everybody, because there's going to be a little bit of trepidation of like, I don't know these people or anything, but be proud of your idea because it may be magic. And we want to try to get those ideas out there. Let me unmute everybody, first of all. A lot of background noise just for you.
So it could be an online course that would be right now considered a traditional way. We also have models for students to earn credit by proficiency to show that they have an understanding of the content.
Okay, there you go. I'm breaking you out into rooms now. See you in a few minutes.
We can do this, and our schools will be using their resources to try to accomplish this in June, which is the typical time that students graduate. But this can happen all the way through to August 31st. And these students can still be a member of the class of 2020, a graduating member.
All right. So I'm in one group right now. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Looks like folks are moving out of the groups. Sweet.
Oops. Oh.
All right, people are coming back. All right, as folks are coming back, feel free to unmute yourself. But I want to get to sort of broad strokes on the conversation. I do see that a couple of folks have started to add some comments to the first question, which is one thing you are doing in the short term to grow your internship program. I'd love to learn more about what are posting there. I want to encourage you all. You can go to this link, type in that number, and you could add a comment as well. We'd appreciate any sort of input from the rest of the group here. And then also, I'm going to look for the folks who are kind of the spokespeople for their groups to get any sort of key takeaways. Some people are still coming back. Let's see. Like most people are back now. All right. So let's see. And I'm going to, this is what Wilson taught me on this call as well. I see Colleen Jones. Who is the head of your group, or who is the spokesman? It could be you if you'd like.
And Nina did a great job.
Great. Nina's awesome. So Nina, do you want to give us one or two takeaways?
Well, one takeaway is that I got to hear from Colleen, and it kind of helped me. I felt very at ease because she's going through this kind of the same thing. I mean, we're all going through the same things together, basically. Like, it's kind of reassuring to hear that in a way, because you're not just on an island on your own. And some of the struggles are the same with just having students being able to log in remotely to do their academics. You know, if they're struggling to do that, I'm worried how they're going to struggle to like log in to do remote internship working. And also just the opportunities of internships being able to do any sort of work remotely. Some things will lend easier than others, you know. So just trying to figure out how to substitute internship work with sort of project work that would be sort of comparable to what they would be learning outside of school.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Nina. In breakout group 2, I see my friend Casey Henry is one of the people in that group. Casey, do you know who the spokesperson was for your group?
I would probably say it's David. What do you think, David? I feel like you were sort of by default running this show. But yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Casey. Am I unmuted? Am I muted? I'm
You're
sorry.
good.
You're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
muted now.
Okay. This is about my 50th Google Meet, so I think it's by default. So I'm just, but I think what you said, Casey, about the cleaning up, it was a good time to get some of those opportunities, just get some clarity around the actual Emblaze system itself. And then I know Deidre, they're working with CTE requirements through this state of Nevada, and then I know the national office with the big picture, thinking about just reevaluating those priorities, and in this time of change. So if anybody else wants to add, I'm sorry, I didn't write them down. So
Well, David, I would just say that I thought it was very interesting what you said, I think, about what's going on in Kentucky, and that is that a lot of your students are still at internships. Isn't that what you said?
I have about
That really surprised me. 40 of them.
Yeah, we 40 out of 115 from my particular high school, and we're about 30%. So we were 33, I guess. Yeah, so we were kind of surprised too by the numbers, and we employ a lot of our students, so that obviously they're not working, but so that number is actually higher if you look at the non-school-based positions. Again, we probably have 40, a third of the positions are from our school systems. So cafeteria leaders, working in central office, working in school systems as instructional assistants, or wherever the principal needs them. So we also have facility assistant leaders. We have several that are employed by the school system. So we felt like we had to be the one that began that mentorship, and then so the community would kind of come on board, and they have more and more. Kind of putting our money where our mouth is too, right? Okay, thanks.
Sorry, we're running a little short on time here, so I wanted to move on to the next group. Andrea Purcell, my friend, and Wilson are in another group. Who was a spokesperson-y kind of person there?
It was me.
Wilson.
All right.
We actually got a chance to talk to a mentor. Philip Shearer is a mentor for an organization that often has up to 150 interns a year. And they have transitioned to virtual internships right now. They are, if I got Philip's message right, they're working to enable online learning at their schools. So their interns are helping their schools do online learning right now. And they're also working to try to figure out how they can continue a summer program that has been canceled. It looks like John, I think, put it into the chat about signing a petition. That's going on in right now.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. All right. Group 4 is Elliot's group. Elliot, who's the spokesperson with you?
Martina.
Martina, perfect. Right on.
Okay, so I posted on the mentee.com, at least for my part, is just reaching out to mentors and seeing what their need is and what opportunities there might be virtually. Elliot was saying that he is working with Makerspace and following students there to see what I'm not really familiar with Makerspace. But that's something that he's been doing. And I don't know if Elliot, if you want to elaborate more on Makerspace, because I'm not familiar with that.
They're community spaces where kids go to learn outside of school, but they're pursuing they're pursuing their interests, and we're following them out from our schools around those interests, so they get credit for their internships, fellowships, and outside of school learning.
Yeah, I think I want to emphasize that that point. Like, if we get to a place where we could get smaller group like settings where people are going into smaller groups, those, I think, Elliot, you use the word like outlearner centers, kind of like those
I call them outlearners and outlearning, and they're doing this not at the center, they're doing it from the home with the Makerspace connected to them. because the students and the youth are connected to their maker spaces more than they're connected to their school sometimes.
Right. Cool, thank you. Okay, and then I see in breakout room 5, I have, well, Robert Fung is on the call. Robert, who is the spokesperson in your group?
I had the privilege of being the spokesperson.
Okay.
So yeah, we had talked about for the short term, a lot of great ideas came up, but strengthening the foundation of our program, kind of some of the things that I think you had mentioned, David, about looking at our processes and whether they are resilient enough for the work that we need to do for our students, especially since we don't see them on day to day. We also talked about referrals of students to opportunities. So if you have students who have lost an opportunity because of this, because the place is closed or a partner can't support them in that way, where can we have referrals to new partnerships? And we had talked about friends, parents, and colleagues being great sources of referrals. We had also talked about, just on a basic level, which partners are still in the game right now, which ones are still able to provide the kids with a similar experience or an equally valuable experience, and connecting those kids with those mentors directly to have direct check-ins. We talked about maybe we've been scheduling those check-ins for all your kids to have a weekly time where they will email or connect in some other way with a mentor, so that it's not just about, well, you know, can you work for me? Can you do something online? But even if you can't do something online, can we just stay connected? Because the relationship part of mentorship is just as important as the work that they were doing. And then we had talked long term about maintaining the contact with the mentors over the long term. If we're talking about months and then a summer in between, and then we're not sure what the fall will look like, just making sure that mentors don't forget about us, we don't forget about them, you know, now more than ever. Building the network through your existing network. And then Ms. Freeman had a great idea about, she has ambitions of a mentor career fair next fall. You know, the assumption is that we will be in physical proximity again at some point. We're going to want to do that. And then we had talked about some of the challenges being just places that have closed for now and aren't able to support the student the same way. And then just helping students with their time management skills has been a big part of a lot of our work, more than even before. Having them learn how to juggle the schoolwork that they might still be expected to do with some of the LTI or internship pursuit in this new way. There's been maybe a feeling that LTI or internship has become a little bit of more of that add-on perspective, because the students are struggling just to do some of the work or some of the schoolwork from home, and to be able to meet that has been a big challenge.
Thank you, Robert. And then the last group is Casey's group. Mary Beth is in there as well. A bunch of cool folks there. Who's the spokesperson in that group?
I'm happy to share. This is Casey. I think a lot of the ideas that people already mentioned came up in our group as well. Just, you know, really trying to reach out to the mentor community, and as well as to expand the mentor community and understand like what their needs are, and be creative and think about how students can continue their projects, but and the LTI experiences. I think similarly, you know, there's people are struggling with some challenges related to getting all kids tech access and thinking about how to support students' particular needs, for instance, if they have IEPs. And then Mary Beth was talking about an internship project fair that she's been working on, which it sounded like a cool idea to grow and improve the program. I don't know if she wants to.
Yeah, so like typically around this time, I'm organizing this internship project fair where I'm like meeting with nonprofit groups to about like unrealized projects where like seniors, grade 12s or grade 11s could help them for the following year. And Casey had asked me potentially be something that's virtually done, and yeah, I stuff to think, things to think about.
Cool. All right. So a couple other things I want to do. Thank you for all of your sharing. I want to just tell you some things that we can do to help at Big Picture Learning. One of the things I want to call out, because I neglected to mention it in ways we can help, is I really want to call out, it's in the chat, but Harbor Freight Fellows is a paid fellowship in the trades that Big Picture Learning organizes and runs. It's outstanding program. In fact, when I look at the resiliency of those kids are attending internships more than anybody else right now. And it's an application process. You can nominate a student to be part of the fellowship. And then they're part of the system where they get paid, and they're really given an opportunity to explore the world of opportunity in the trades. You feel free to add more to it. I will. It's called Harbor Freight Fellows, or I'm going to put the link up here. Let me just grab it. The link is in the chat here. Again, there you go.
Yeah, no, if you want more information, just give me a shout at email, ewasher@gmail.com, OR. And I put up and posted that there's a Harbor Freight Tools for Schools Teaching Award, which Eric Dyer, who's on the call, won last year, and it's $100,000 or $50,000, depending upon the level. So if you know somebody in CTE or an internship coordinator who's doing incredible work, or yourself, nominate yourself or nominate somebody else. They're looking for people.
Excellent.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, you bet. So some other things I want to point out is, we're here to help in other ways with Emblaze related. If you decide that it's in your, that you think that you want to take a more regional approach to internships. I know Andrea Purcell is on this call. She's heading up a regional approach in LA, Los Angeles. We have the functionality in Emblaze to support that now. So please email me if that's something that you're interested in, and we're happy to start to get that transition for you. We are also, sorry about it all loaded at once there. We're happy to build reports for you. If you want a report of all of your mentors who have or recently had a student and their name and their email address, so you can run a merge email campaign, just ask. Wilson is on this call as well. You could ask him or me, David at emblaze.org or David at bigpicturelearning.org or Wilson at Emblaze or Wilson at bigpicturelearning.org. Email us and ask for a report that you want. If you want a report to clean up your data that shows all of your internships so that you can have it in a spreadsheet and more quickly edit it, let us know. We're happy to help with that. There's some other resources that we have. There's a whole, there's a blog series that we're doing around coronavirus and leading to learn and our work right now that I encourage you to check out. Again, I'll share with you the links to this deck. And then also we have a website up right now that's sort of our response to COVID-19 and how we think that the students, what the student-centered response should be. We're, as an organization, mobilized right now. We are actively coming up with new solutions and to help connect people and to help solve some of the challenges that you're facing today. With that, I want to point out there's this great book that I mentioned around Julie Freeland Fisher. And then I want to thank you all for attending. And this is my email address, and connect with me, build your own LinkedIn networks, connect with me on LinkedIn as well. And I'm happy to help with anything else that you have. I know that there are a lot of folks here, so I hope you had a chance to voice any questions or concerns, but please email me directly as Elliot did as well. I will do too. This is the easiest email address. It's in the chat. Email me if you want to continue the conversation or you're facing some challenges that you think that we can help with. We're here for you. On that, I appreciate you all staying a little bit late. We're about 10 minutes behind schedule here. If there's not any last, like, oh my God, I can't believe you didn't talk about this, then we'll wrap up. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Thank you all. It's wonderful to have everybody on this call. This is the power of our network. So thank you for the 28 or so folks that attended today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks.
Bet.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, thank you.